Welcome to Weekly Wins and Losses. My name is James Hepner, former real estate entrepreneur turned self-development hacker, coach, and fulfillment strategist. Each week, we bring you a thought to wrestle with that'll help you live fully alive and gain more life. Real life is made up of both wins and losses. Both were designed for your good. That's basic reality. Without facing and learning how to embrace your losses for greater gain, you miss out. You leave 50% of your life experience on the table. So with that, let's begin the show. When I originally thought to begin this podcast, I never thought I would have this many of you people listening. Frankly, I'm blown away, honestly. It's quite something. Now, a couple of things I just wanted to share. Now, as many of you have been reaching out to inquire about working with me, and the questions seem to follow a similar pattern. So, I wanted to take your understanding of what that could look like and make it just super easy for you to understand. Let me tell you a little bit about my actual business. I do live events like keynote speaking and retreats. I do group and one-on-one coaching. And I also host a no-charge Friday noon virtual weekly wins and losses global video call. Now, I have to say, there is a distinct difference between the one-on-one strategic results coaching experience and the live group work like our virtual weekly wins and losses global call. The one-on-one coaching, that strategic results coaching program goes super deep. Now, this is for those of you that are deeply hungry for the ultimate, intimate, personal, transformational experience. Because it's just you and I, we get to get beneath the surface of your individual experience of life, and there we get to align with all of those wonderful strengths that you have. And from that place, sculpt, craft, and design a personal success and fulfillment formula that is unique to you. Again, this is for those that are really hungry and want it all. Now, the virtual weekly wins and losses global call, in my opinion, is quite the experience. And frankly, I'm kind of biased. I created it, but I don't know if there's a better way to bring raw truth to what your last week is really all about. It's no charge and happens every Friday at noon. Jumping on this little call will deliver a profound experience for you as you clear the deck of all the unhelpful stings of last week's losses so that when your new week begins, you're best able to launch out of the gate invigorated and ready to take bold, courageous action forward without the unhelpful sides of hesitation and delay. I invite each one of you to show up and share as you wish, or simply observe others share a personal win and personal loss that stood out for them from the past week. Whether it's weekly wins and losses or coaching, come and master the art of being prepared for anything, win, lose, or draw. Come and learn how to authentically celebrate both a win and a loss in real time, every time. For live events, keynote speaking, group, and one-on-one strategic results coaching, simply go to www.jameshepner.com. And for the no-charge virtual weekly wins and losses global call happening every Friday at noon, simply go to www.weeklywinsanдлosses.com. Click on the link halfway down the page that says Join this Friday call. So now, please sit back and enjoy this free information. I challenge you to engage with it. And I sincerely hope it brings you value and stirs you to the needed new perspective and maybe, just maybe, even brings an important question to the surface. Questions that will help clarify that you can take a great move forward. So may this episode number 28 of Overcoming Adversity with Compassion change your everyday life. Welcome, folks. Today I have on the show someone by the name of Jonathan McLernon. I asked him how to pronounce his name, and I thought, is this like McLaren? He goes, no, it's McLernon. So we're on to the right something here. We don't want to be messing up names right to begin with. Jonathan, and he calls himself Coach John, is a weight loss coach, an emotional eating expert who lost 100 pounds. Gee, boy, that's a lot of weight. Good job.
Yeah,
From
nanotechnology, it's like a little human.
You lost a little baby there. From nanotechnology researcher to Navy Marine engineer to globetrotting nomad, Coach John spent most of his life running from his true calling until one question changed his life. Now he's on a mission to help others transform their life and health. With Freedom Nutrition coaching, he marries the science of metabolism with the psychology of behavioral change and the compassion of human connection to create life-changing transformation for his clients. Well, that
is a heartful, and that's a mouthful. Good job, my friend. Good job. So
It's,
welcome to the show, Jonathan.
yeah, it's awesome to be here. I know we had the pleasure of a previous conversation, so I'm excited for this one.
So perhaps I left you with on our last call, I left you with the best experience, and now you just left with the remnants of us. So we'll
Yeah.
see if this really is going to be a good one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, the one thing that I've really appreciated about getting to know you is how you have this ferocious desire to steep yourself in reality and not run from, have however running towards become your thing. And so why don't we just begin? For me, I'm
Yeah.
fascinated. There's a lot of weight loss coaches, and a lot of them, and I hate to say this, but it seems like a lot of them brand themselves as within the feminine spirit. And here you come along and you've got this thing. And to be honest, I have an experience with losing weight. I know what it was like to be 50 pounds overweight, and to churn off some of the fat, the fat accumulation, and moving more into power performance. But tell me your experience. I'm just curious. So how did you go? And especially how did you marry that together with a few other things that we talked about?
Well, it's kind of, it comes from like maybe a colorful past, and I'll skip the first 30 years for brevity's sake. And I just ticked over 40. So we're going to cover a decade in a very short window of time. But at the age of 29, I went through a trauma where I was nearly beaten to death living in South Africa. And
Wow.
that really messed with my head. I didn't know how to process that emotionally. There was a physical trauma as well, but it was really the emotional that left a significant imprint. And so my response to that ultimately was I fell into a pattern of binge eating and food addiction as a way of coping with my trauma. But I didn't really understand that. Like, I didn't have, it's interesting now to look back through the lens of understanding that I have and go, that was why I was doing that. Then it just felt like this out of control behavior that I just couldn't seem to rein in, and I didn't know why, and I didn't understand. And probably stems from the fact that, like, even going back 10 years, the conversations that we would have had around mental health look a little bit different than they do even now. And so I didn't know who to talk to, or where to look for help. I didn't know the kind of help that I needed. So that got me into, well, if I just lose weight, like, because I gained about 120 pounds. So it was like, if I just lose weight, that's the problem. That's why I'm angry. I hate myself. I hate my life. I hate my body. There was just a lot of self-loathing, and so I spent probably 6-7 years trying to do this. I went into my chemistry background, became a supplement scientist, ran a nutrition and supplement store. I had a whole pharmacy in my basement. I tried every single sort of nutritional and dietary, dietary program I could get my hands on. And none of it seemed to work. I could make any program work for a short window of time, but it always seemed to end in like a flaming wreck. And this was the pattern that I really, really struggled to break. I couldn't understand why this was the case. And it was at that place of, I was starting to come into this place of conscious incompetence. So I was aware there's a piece that I'm missing, but I don't even know what I'm missing. I just know that something is missing. And I had the very good fortune of hiring a coach back in 2017 who shone a light on what was missing in my life. And he worked with me, and I hired him because I thought I wanted to, get jacked and look like him. That was a thing. I thought I'd be happy if I looked like him. Still sort of operating from that headspace. And when he worked with me from a place of compassion and modeled what that behavior looks like for me, but still as a masculine presence, it changed how I saw myself, how I saw my relationship to myself, to my body, and so on, and made it okay for me to go through the emotions that I was experiencing. And so now I look back and I realize that I kind of had this distorted view of even what masculinity looked like. And that was really an impediment to me being able to create some kind of lasting change in my life.
Wow. Interesting what happens when we stumble into compassion.
Yeah.
Right. And compassion tends to bring together and offer us the invitation instead of eliminating and then say we're utilizing. It's not really what we're doing when we're eliminating, right? Compassion is like, well, how is this for the moment here? And to let utilize. Go ahead.
Well, I just because I use compassion a lot in terms of the work that I do. It's a central tenet. I've talked about the compassion of human connection. And I think it's important that we understand it, because I had a misunderstanding around what that was as well. And so probably for a very long time, I rejected compassion. One, because I had a sense that I wasn't worthy of it. I didn't
Mm,
somehow deserve this. So
mhm,
that was in itself an interesting thing. But secondly, because I just saw it as a very feminine, soft, weak almost thing.
mhm,
And in truth, it's not, because compassion isn't a get out of jail free card. That's not what this is about. It's not about enabling unhelpful behaviors, but it's about seeking to understand and being able to look at the behavior from the perspective of you're a struggling human being versus the perspective of judgment and holding you up to an impossibly perfect standard. So
mm, mm,
once I started to realize that compassion was giving me the space to, what I would say, wrestle with my demons in the light, stop hiding them,
mm,
and face them with the support of somebody else in my corner, then it became a very different thing, because I didn't have to hide this anymore.
mm, mm, mhm, mhm. That's well said. Wrestling with your demons in the light. It's so often we think that apparently the thing we don't want, the thing to do would be to push it down a little further. And then when it
Yeah.
comes up just a little further into that back corner, you know how we all have these haunted or these ghosts in our haunted houses. We just push them down. There's a trap door there. We're like, nah, we don't want to go there. And so we just
Yeah.
nicely position them there until, and you know, folks, you'll all have this experience. If you haven't had already, you will in life at some point in time. Most of us have, and again, if you haven't, you will. But at you know, those things that we put there will come to the surface at likely the worst of times.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like there's never a good time
Mm,
for this stuff to come to light, because there's never a convenient time to do the
mm,
uncomfortable work. There's never a
mhm,
convenient time to face
mhm,
the ugly side of who we are. And I think we all have like a little darkness in us.
mm,
There's like kind of a duality to our human nature, if we want to get a little bit philosophical in a sense. And many of us are afraid to acknowledge that. And I think about something like I think it's Jordan Peterson who talks about something along the lines of like, be a monster. But what he's not saying, go out and cause harm to people, but he's like, harness the strength that you have in you, and be this under
mm,
control. And I'm
mm,
probably like misquoting him somehow, because I should go back and listen to it. I heard it a few years back, but I just remember something along the lines of like, be a monster. Like, in other words, don't hide from who you are. Don't
mhm,
hide from your strengths.
mm.
Don't hide from the struggles, but be that and face that.
I think labels get us into so much trouble when we look at, and right behind me there's this red thing, right? And some people say that the
Yeah.
sun, what is that? What is that supposed to be? The red to me bears in mind what you're talking about, in that what reveals the truth of who I am. You see all of who I am. And so is it just James that is this fun loving, let's just go into like the sweet by and by, constantly laughing and all these things. I do like to laugh. I do like to
Mm,
be light. I do like to engage in those behaviors. But let's be honest, for me, what actually allows me to ground into the being that I actually am. And when I hold, for example, your story, I'm beaten within inches of death in South Africa. When I hear some of these things, I don't hear you talking about how that story was sent to take you down. Actually, I hear quite the opposite. I hear it's like the darkness, let your darkness shine.
mm,
And that is that I didn't say let's convert your darkness into some bright light.
mm, mm.
Let's let it shine, right? And so there's a story back in, and there's many spiritual stories, one of which is, it's found in the Bible, where apparently God created light and it was good. And what do the religious folks often think? They think, wow, what must have come before that was bad.
Mhm, mhm.
And to be honest, if it is true that there's a source that created all things, if that is to be true, I would have to say that before there was light, there was darkness, and maybe everything is formed on the darkness.
Mhm.
And so we have this constant, well, we're so glad that the darkness is gone and now the light is, so finally good things can be, when in essence, let's be honest, darkness is kind of soothing. It's just like there's nothing, it's just dark. And ask yourself, Jonathan, what are you able to see now because of the darkness? Because often we
Mm.
can actually, when we stop labeling and we're compassionate towards all of our experience, we can actually see things better in the darkness sometimes. We don't have the limitations of all the visibles, and the visibles often give us more perceptions of what isn't even there. But darkness, very often, what is there? We see it.
Mhm. And it's really interesting to think about it from that perspective. I'm at peace with who I am. I'm at
Mhm,
peace with aspects of my nature that, given
mhm,
a choice, I probably wouldn't choose them,
mhm,
but they're there. They're a part of who I am.
mm,
And the same goes for my past. There's elements of my past that, in hindsight, I wouldn't choose that. But as you rightly pointed out, I wouldn't remove these things from my past, because it's like I had to go through these experiences in order to
mhm,
uncover like who I actually am and to make peace with
mhm,
that, and to let go of even this ideal that I felt like I was supposed to live up to, and instead
mm,
just, this is who I am, warts and all. And obviously we want to put our best foot forward. We want to achieve what our potential is, and I think actually staring at our potential is kind of scary for a lot
mhm,
of people,
mhm,
because there's a lot of risk associated with trying to achieve your maximum potential, and at some point there's some disappointment waiting for you, because you're going to find that there is some eventual finite limitations to what you can accomplish as a human being. I think we love the idea of, shoot for the stars and be incredible, and so on and so forth, and that's really cool. I'm not trying to discourage anybody from that, but I think what actually stops us from striving to achieve what we're capable of is the fear of disappointment that we might feel when we finally realize what our actual limitations are. We
mm,
would rather just keep that in the dark.
mm, mm. Well, when you consider, Jonathan, what makes joy possible? Like I have my own view of looking at it. What
Mm.
actually makes joy possible?
Well, we have to know what sorrow is. Otherwise, joy has no meaning. There's nothing to contrast it to. And so, if all it is normal, then it isn't actually joy.
Mhm,
And I often say the
mhm,
same thing. Like, we can't have
mhm,
happiness without having known sadness. You know, we can't have joy without having known loss.
mm,
And so, we often,
mm,
talking about like negative, we often put a negative slant on these emotions. And I would rather look at them from a neutral place and say it's not something wrong when I experience this emotion. And in fact, it's a necessary part of my life to experience this emotion. And if I don't experience this emotion that we call negative, then I miss out on everything that, the fullness that life has to offer.
mm, mhm, mhm, mhm. When you use the term knowing, it's really interesting. The other day, I was on a call with this gentleman, and he was under the impression that he was very self-aware. Now, you could argue he was. The only thing is, when you come to appreciate what he was saying, self-awareness is showing that you understand what's happening around you. That's
Mm,
self-awareness in simplistic term, right? And we all have communication and the ability to, before we can say and utter a word. How does a child do it? How did we do it? Through empathy.
mm,
Self-awareness, it's always been. Self-awareness is always the only thing. Is this gentleman, I said to him, are you sure that you're self-aware, or are you maybe a little more certain that you're very self-critical?
mm,
And so when we think about self-awareness versus being overtly self-critical, and then tying that together with when you said, I know loss, I know sadness, knowing,
mm.
what does it look like for you if you would describe it? Knowing, so if you'd lean into the depths of, and for those of you that know me on this talk or on these podcasts, I'm not some dystopic that it's trying to get into the hole and stay in the hole. To me, it's like, how
Yeah,
can we do heavy work in a light way? You know what
right.
I mean? And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, let's not turn a negative into positive. Let's let them, they're very okay where they can handle their own. The light can handle its own, the darkness can handle. How they're both beautiful together. We're just saying, hey, listen, we as humans, let's not separate these things, and let's not come to this place of like this mediocre living. Let's take the ginormity of the darkness, the ginormity of
Mm.
the light, and let's leave them there, and let's be like, oh my goodness, this is for us to enjoy. Oh my goodness. But back to the question. Talk to me about knowing loss, knowing sadness. Talk to me about that. What is that for you?
Well, there's definitely a heaviness on the inside that I can feel, kind of the core of my being. I would say
Mhm,
maybe even like very close to underneath where my physical heart is. So it's the sense of heaviness. There's a weight to it, because I think in that instance, I'm contemplating something that I had hope for, something that I wanted, something that I
mhm,
desired, that is now out of reach,
mhm,
that's been taken from me. And in that case, sometimes it's a small thing, sometimes it's a very major thing. I've had some major losses in my life as well. And but there's a poem that I think about, and I wish I could find the author so I could read the actual poem, but it just speaks about the difference between I walked a mile with laughter and I walked a mile with sorrow, and what those two experiences were like.
Wow.
Walk a mile with laughter and you have a grand old time, but at the end of it, you're not really a changed person. You've learned nothing. But walk a mile with sorrow,
Mm,
and I think it goes something like, I walked a mile with sorrow and nary a word was said, but by the end of it, I had learned so much. And
mm,
so even going through this experience of sadness, we learn, or I learned, like, what matters to me, what is valuable to me. And
mhm.
sometimes we even treat loss as a bad thing. I had a business failure that cost me everything. And that was a hard thing to come
Oh,
to terms
that's how
with.
you lost your weight. It cost you everything, so you lost your weight.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, this happened kind of in the middle of my weight loss transformation. Was like
Wow.
losing a business, losing a friendship, someone who I thought was a friend. Turns out he'd been betraying me. He was dishonest, he was crooked, he was sociopathic, his accountant was in on this. Like, I was being screwed over royally. So if we want to talk about loss, there
Mm,
was so many things when that moment of realization came to me. There was so many things that were taken from me, and of course losing my life savings. Well, what about the house that we were going to buy? What about the business asset we were building, and all of this? And
mm,
but I look back now, what I'm doing now, the place I'm in, and I go, I wouldn't be here if I was still trapped in that very
mm,
limiting situation. But in the moment, it seemed like, because I was so set on making this
mm.
thing work, and this was the way, and this is what, that I couldn't see outside of it. I was being blinded by it. And so going through the experience of loss and sadness and realizing, well, what really matters to me, and what was it costing me to actually be in that situation that I thought was, positive and beneficial and so on. So loss also, I think, strips away parts of us in a really good way,
Mhm.
so that we can see things a little bit more clearly. And so it's not that we go out and deliberately seek loss and sorrow and sadness and pain, but there's so many lessons in it.
Mhm. 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 Such a fascinating play. We are invited to become intimate with our life experience. And it's only natural when you think about it. It's normal to look upon. I had a bad dream. I don't want to, like, why do grandparents sometimes say about a dream, and you tell the grandkids, don't worry about it, it's not true, on and on and just get away from it, right? And so we kind of look
Right.
at it going, perhaps this is just the moment when I can get away from. But it's a little like, as time goes on in life, you begin to realize that certain things just don't end. There are certain things that are like the reoccurring cycles of nature. There's the plant grows and the plant dies. And instead of us wallowing in the fact that apparently this didn't work out, nature doesn't seem to complain. It just harmonizes and comes around, and it swallows up the plant and the ground becomes more fertile. So we start realizing, wait a minute, this loss might be an illusion, because it seems like the earth knows exactly what to do with this. It actually helps to recreate, and it becomes fuel. And are like, we as humans, I think, are nudged constantly to being like, actually, if I think about constantly adding stuff to myself, do I like to be under the pretense that becoming a walking contraption is a fun experience to have? I got so many contraptions I can barely move. And like you
Right.
said, instead of adding more, it's like the in breath we take in and the out breath we let go. So loss, like we said earlier, like you mentioned, it helps strip away, helps to
Mm.
lighten the load, and helps to, actually, the very thing that we want, helps to clarify what matters most. Often when I think about, this knowingness, and like you say, heavy, one thing that I came into the experience of, and this happened years ago, but this gentleman was doing this meditation, and one of the things he said was, I want you to just feel yourself sitting in your chair, and I want you to feel the heaviness of you sitting in the chair.
Right.
And I thought,
Yeah.
wow, this is so interesting, right? So the truth is, if there wasn't gravity, and so I just become aware of my butt cheeks in the chair. He says, now I want you to take your hands and I want you to feel the weight of your hands. I'm like, the weight? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. They're weighty. He goes, now put them on your lap, but now let them just hang to the side of you. And I want you to feel that your blood is just rushing to the edge of your fingertips. Like it's just going quickly. Feel the weight of it. Feel the draw. And all of a sudden, at that moment, I thought to myself, this is so interesting. How many times, and don't get me wrong, we like to stand up and move and, your physiology and get it into your being, transform. That's so great. But it's like, wow, to be thankful for the heaviness. It's like, who doesn't want to be, if you're not heavy, you're going to float away. You want gravity to pull you down. You like a person actually enjoys. What do you think has us as a society? What do you think has us so enamored with this up, up, up? We're going higher, higher, higher. This is nope. We don't want to experience anything that's black.
Yeah.
We're, what is this? Or a little too heavy. What do you think that we could all be about that would draw us to want to know what is actually happening and to honor that sacred that's right in front of us, that experience? What do you think we as humanity in society could be about? That would flip the deck.
Yeah, I think to move away from this idea that going through loss and experiencing sadness is entirely a negative thing. So there's a fear. Like no, we have this wired into our biology, right? To be afraid of pain, because pain is a teacher as well. So we do something and we feel pain and we learn, well, maybe I shouldn't do that again, but I wouldn't know that except that I felt pain. So pain is a teacher. So I think just this idea, this ability to reframe loss or sadness, and maybe even remove the term negative from it. Because if we stop seeing it as a negative and say, what can I gain from this? What comes out of this? Whether it's clarity, a clear sense of purpose and vision, a realization of what's true and precious in your life. There's that phrase, it's better to love and lose than to never love at all. But there's a lot of people who are afraid to love because they're afraid of, and maybe afraid that if I feel that pain, I don't know if that pain will ever stop, or I don't know. And this is only my thought really, but I really feel as though we are losing the ability to be emotionally resilient. And as much as I love technology, I run an online business, I have social media accounts, like I have what I have as a result of modern technology. So I don't want to sound ungrateful, but it's conditioning, or if we don't realize this, it's conditioning our brains in the wrong way. It's conditioning our brains to think that when I don't feel dopamine, you might not use those exact words, but when I don't feel that something is wrong. And that's a problem. So we're now afraid to go through feeling difficult emotions. We got so conditioned to think that everyone's life was a highlight reel except our own. Even if we logically knew that wasn't the case, it's still what is presented to us. So it's hard to fight that perception. So maybe we need to step back even from that and go, hang on a sec. Like, what is real life made up of? It's almost like let's step out. Like the Matrix is so prophetic. Ironically, I think that came out like 20 odd years ago. And man, what a concept that was expressed there. And we all watched it, or I'm not sure if you watched it, but I remember back in the day, it feels like it was a very, very iconic movie. But it was expressing, do you want to remain sort of mired in this pseudo, well, now maybe it's the metaverse, right? But this pseudo reality where everything like feels perfect, but in fact, you're not actually engaged with life? Or are you willing to step out and experience the discomfort of real life? But the way that we convince people that it is worth it is to show them what they gain from this. To show them that we remove the idea that this is a negative thing. Ultimately, we come out of this a better person because we've experienced it.
I find it interesting. And so just pinging off what you're saying, I find it fascinating how humans tend to find their way back to their most comfortable place. And that is, if it was good, if I was good, and if I was enough, then there'd be nothing behind the scenes. It would just be perfect. Like, you go to Disneyland, happiest place ever. But if you ever poke your nose between the set, it's a mess behind. You see
Right.
all of the lollipops and the Mickey and Minnie and the castle, and it's all beautiful and it's happily ever after. But then you look behind and you're like, so what allows this to be possible? And you see what's really there. And it's fascinating because, and I'm, gonna build right into your point. We have this seemingly addiction towards a variety of living that I can't call forward at all, other than to say it seems completely fantasy based. Do you
Yeah.
want a real life? Meaning, do you want to really live? Or do you want to behave life? And a behaving life looks like you're building into something that it's constantly at the throttle where you're trying to keep away. Years ago, I was getting my hair cut at this hair salon, and this fantastic the girl who normally cuts my hair wasn't available.
Mm-hmm.
The owner was cutting my hair. He's a fantastic gentleman, and he was unpacking to me while I was sitting in the chair. He was saying it seems like in life he constantly has to hold the wave back. Like he has to, he's getting tired of holding the wave back. And you hear these things, the wave, you think to yourself, well, who can hold a wave back? I mean, have you ever tried standing? It doesn't really work. And so I asked him, how's it working? And he said, I'm getting tired. And I said, what's going to happen once you're really tired? He goes, well, a wave might just take me over. And I said, so what might, I don't know. I said to him, is this a wave that you want to keep holding back? And it's fascinating because it seems to me like water will just penetrate wherever it wants to go. If you see water come down the hill, it'll just go. If there's a little a rock or a branch, it won't stop and go, what should I do? It'll just go around and be like, oh, you're there. I'll just go here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Reality just goes with what is. Fantasy has this thing where it's like these human bots that apparently we think we are. We're like, watch this. We're going to control ourselves across the finish line. And if you're not totally awake, we're going to help you, meaning we're going to manipulate you across the finish line because that's what you want with us, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of like a crazy, uncomfortable thought too. But I love sort of the expression of, well, do we want to like behave life or do we want to live life?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to go through the motions? And that's, I could go back to why we're doing this. It comes from this place of fear of discomfort or being conditioned to think. Because I look at, say, my grandmother's life. She's gone now. She passed away in 2003, so quite a few years back. But she was born in 1914. That was the start of World War I. In 1917, there was the Spanish flu pandemic. She was the one who found her 3-year-old sister dead. My sister won't wake up. She was 4 years old at the time. Then you have the Great Depression, and then you have World War II. And of course, in all of this, when she was growing up, she had 11 siblings. She was the oldest. She had to take care of them because her parents were sick. Her 7-year-old son drowns. Her house burns down. She loses everything. Like this was her life. And she did a lot of this without electricity, like where electrification was only starting, let alone cell phones and internet. Her husband passed away when she was 65. She lived another 30 years without him. And I never heard a word of complaint come out of her mouth. Never. And I say very often, like, her name was Tris, but she would have been aptly named Grace. She had this, but it was kind of like, this was just how life was. Life was hard. But look what it produced. It produced this woman who I look back on, this beautiful spirit of grace and willingness to just bear hardship and suffering without complaint, really. And I feel like we've kind of lost that. And again, it's not that we look for suffering, but in fact, I think we make our suffering worse when we try to hide from it.
That's for sure.
Now we become afraid of what we're going to feel and experience. And so, I think we need to reawaken this ability to, like, we have within us the capacity to be emotionally resilient. We do. We actually have that. Human beings have this. But there's this fear that, if I go into this dark place, that I'll never come out. But that's not true. We have so much evidence throughout human history that it's possible. I mean, I look back to someone like Viktor Frankl, for example, who lived through the horrors of a Nazi concentration camp and wrote about it. and even had peace in some of these moments. Like, that shows you the capacity of the human spirit. So we have, I don't believe we've actually lost our capacity for this kind of emotional resilience. We've just become afraid of actually having to use it and go into that place where it's necessary. And we don't uncover it until an experience. I didn't know I had this within me until I had to go through an experience that just about crushed me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was only in that experience
Yeah.
that I discovered the strength that I actually had.
Well, to your point, you see your grandma went through the Great Depression. You listen to the words like the Great Depression. And of course, it's some big crisis. It's a glorification of a crisis. Anyway, make a long story short, it's a moment in time most people remember. I wasn't there. I'm not that old.
Yeah.
I turned 46 tomorrow. So there you go. That wasn't
Happy early
there.
birthday.
But, yeah, thank you. And so all that we can think about when you think Great Depression, we just hear how hard it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we think to yourself, wow, whew, one luck that isn't happening today. One luck where, I'm a generation or two removed from that. So I have no recollection. My grandparents, they tell stories about different times when they were alive during that time. But I'm going, wow, and it's interesting because we look upon that generation and we think to ourselves, wow, that was really unique. They had the ability to bear hardship.
Mm-hmm.
And
every
it's
generation
interesting
before them did too.
Exactly. Right. But for some reason, right, if we're not careful, we're like, they did, but some people don't neuroassociate and say, well, if they did, then so do I. What is it about? And it's fascinating. I think it's become lost on us to be grateful in every moment for everything we get. I was at a dinner party the other day. We had friends sitting around the table, hadn't seen some of these people for a while. And we were just chatting it up and having a really nice time. And we were just talking a little bit about, and of course, Viktor Frankl came up. He it's sometimes that happens in a real life scenario, but it came up. And so, to your point, I said to him, or these gentlemen, my wife is talking to her girlfriends at one end, and we know how this is sometimes. Like the sexes, they break apart. Not like a Me Too, but it just happens, right? And so we're just chatting about different things in life. And I said to them something to the extent of, I've come to the realization that life is pretty much what you decide it will be. Now that's just been oversaid as far as I'm concerned, but I'm like, life is here and I can choose to see the good in what I'm experiencing. And I'm not a positive thinking. I think if there's a weed, go and pick it up, go rip it out and do what you need to do with it. Okay. But to the point on Viktor Frankl, how is it with all this suffering around him? There's a story, I don't know if it was from that book or someone told a story that was in the camp when he was there. There's apparently these people that are lined up with nooses around their head. And of course, we know what happens next. The trapdoor drops below and they all plop. However, there's a line of people that has to watch all of this, of course. All the boys, all the men, whoever's in the camp has to watch. So they're watching. And this one gentleman looks over, was it a Frankl, at another individual and said, hey, listen, I just want to ask you, where is your God during a time like this? And Frankl, this individual, said, what do you mean? He said, well, look over there's a boy. That boy, if you watch, when that trapdoor goes, that boy is not going to die right away. So where is your God in a moment of suffering like that? The trapdoor goes and there's the boy. It's just struggling as ever. Everyone dies instantly, but the boy is still alive.
Yeah.
And this gentleman looked over and said, you want to know where God is? Right there with the boy right now.
Yeah.
It's in that moment of gratitude being like, if we think even for a moment that we don't have something to be grateful for, if we think for a moment that there isn't enough for us exactly for the moment that we have to bear, and actually ask yourself this, what is life?
Yeah. Really?
We are made as humans to do hard life. That's what fuels us for courage. That's what makes us feel something. Instead of us just beholding our grandparents' story about dirty 30s or this Great Depression, perhaps we want to bring ourselves into it. And I have this little thing where I talk about actually initiating discomfort. If you don't initiate discomfort, we live in a North American society where apparently a better life is full of luxury, saying yes to all the luxury. Yet perhaps the opposite. Now, I'm not saying like initiate discomfort, like, listen, someone's being kind, go and hurt them. I'm not talking about this. This is not helpful.
Right.
I'm talking about this kind of, but I'm talking about listen to your body. It's like when I start my morning, I don't know what your regime is. It sounds like you've done some biohacking, different things. But unless you activate hormesis, right, whatever that ends up being, but you stress test your body, whether you work out, you do something, you bring slight strain, hormesis. Either I do my ozone therapy, hop in the sauna, elevate body temperature, slight fever response. Your body actually craves to say, listen, do you respect who I am? I have
Right.
come here to give you a good life, and if you are wise, you will load me slightly. You won't power through pain, but
Mm.
you are going to entrain into me, and you're going to help me remember that I am made for difficult things. And that's how I fully live.
Yeah.
We're all designed for this difficult.
Yeah.
Difficult is of the good.
It's, we think about it like in life, we all have the same end. If
Mhm.
we're fortunate enough, but if we're fortunate enough to live to old age, life just gets more difficult in one sense.
Mhm.
Now it gets more beautiful, I think, because there's just a degree
Mm.
of appreciation, right? So it gets more beautiful, but from a physical standpoint, it gets more difficult. And it's like maybe we have to go through that experience if we have the privilege of living to be old, just to appreciate what is. And I think that this is why I am religious. I don't wear it on my sleeve. I don't walk around with pronouncements or anything like that. I don't even really talk that much about it publicly, but I am a Christian. And I almost can't imagine life without something like that. Because what is life without a belief in beyond this life? It
Mm.
would just feel
Mhm.
very hopeless and very depressing.
Mm.
And we can try and rationalize our way around that, but I think when the moment of truth comes for most people, religious or not, when
Mm.
when that moment comes that like life is drawing to a close, we're all going to contemplate: is there something more than this? And maybe wish that we had contemplated it sooner in life.
Mm. Times are always here inviting us to be like, and how so? And I don't know about you, but perhaps this is the whole play. However, this whole thing was designed. It's like, can you imagine if we knew where all the good surprises were? No,
Yeah,
they're hidden. They're beautifully disguised in everything that we touch.
yeah.
And when we discover it, what's interesting is it's the inviting of the human ego, right? And of course, what does the human ego do? It's not too helpful, the unhelpful side of the ego anyway. Ego
Mm,
container is a good container, but the unhelpful side, dude, it'll wreck you, right? So it's a little bit like this. The human gets to experience, what is this? Is it just me who apparently came up with and who woke up into that this is a gift? And now apparently I'm the one who gets to go and teach other people how to do this. Or is this actually, and like you say, as life grows and grows and grows, it becomes more difficult because physically it becomes more. And what ends up happening is we begin to realize that this is actually all a play, and it's a natural dance towards us discovering in real time without even necessarily needing to share so much about it. It's like your state becomes grateful, your actual
mm.
state of being. Don't get me wrong. I
Yeah,
think, I think saying audibles, like I'm grateful for this and grateful for that, and like, and let your body move and do whatever is going on. But I think beneath the gratitude, so you talk about getting through adversity, getting through, and talk to me about this. I have this little thing where I say gratitude is at the top. And if you're really grateful, you're going to actually learn to trust what's in front of you. And
mm.
when you learn to trust, it's almost like going, you learn your place. So you say you don't really talk about your religion or faith, I don't like, openly talk. I, like you, I am a Christian as well. I am now a inclusive Christian. I was once, years and years and years ago, I was raised in a very conservative home. And so it was kind of exclusionary, and that's not my way of living anymore. Right. But it's a little bit like taking and onboarding what actually is this beautiful. It is to say that life is the teacher, and to just reflect back what we observe. And what we observe is that when a tree dies and falls over, or if a lightning bolt strikes it, it doesn't complain when it crumbles right next to the other big old tree that's still alive. It doesn't say, well, why couldn't I live?
Mm.
And it more so just goes, I'm here now. And you just keep on moving. So talk to me a little bit about, when you talk about overcoming adversity, how do you hold that when you work with your people, that it's a
Mm.
difficult experience, as into, let's not take some difficult and let's just not convert this into positive. How do you hold that they feel understood, they feel known, and they feel like it's real? And at the same time, how do you then take that and how do you move them with you holding that space that it is difficult?
I think this is one of the challenging things that we do as coaches. And I think we have to have gone through this experience ourselves before we can really guide somebody else through it. And this is, anybody out there
Mhm.
that hires a coach, you're going to know the difference
Mhm.
between a coach that read a book about this and a coach that lived this. Right?
Oh my
That's the
goodness.
part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
So true.
my clients, like I said, look, I'm not a fitness model, but you're not coming to me because you want to be a fitness model. Like, you're coming to me because you want to overcome something significant in your life.
Mhm.
And I have overcome significant things in my life, not because I am different than you, but because we have a lot of similarities. So we look to people like coaches and mentors to actually do exactly this. So I tell my clients, look, it'd be nice if we were to, in our mind, we think it'd be nice if I was to maybe pull up with my unicorn steed, and I've got two of them, so I've got one for me, one for you, and we're going to climb the rainbow and go up into the clouds, and we're just going to cross the rainbow bridges from cloud to cloud while you try to do this transformation. But ultimately, you learn nothing. You come out of it, you would come out the other side no different, and you would have gained nothing from it. And so instead, the reality is we're going to go kayaking through a tunnel of sewage, and this is what it's actually going to be like. Now, if you're willing to, if I haven't scared you off with that, then let's go. Because on the other side of it, I said, there's 10 million bucks. It's a representation of, there's a life of freedom that you didn't have before if you're willing to go through this journey. Now, along the way, it's going to be uncomfortable, but you're not alone in this journey. And I'm not going to gloss over the hard stuff. I'm going to sit with you in it. We use this phrase, hold space, and maybe it sounds cliche, but what it is, I am not going to invalidate someone's feelings by telling you shouldn't feel this. No, you should. You should feel this. But if it feels really heavy, let me be there with you. And then it feels a little bit less heavy.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think we're all called to bear each other's burdens, right? We're all called,
Yeah.
right, not to be responsible for one another, but to one another.
I say to people, I'm a tour guide, not your Sherpa.
Mm.
And really, I say that as respectfully as possible. But again, because I would dishonor you, the individual, if I tried to do your work for you. I'm actually taking away from you if I try to do your work for you. My ego is causing me to rob you from what you would actually gain by doing this work. And so I won't do the work for you, but I'll show you how you can do the work more effectively and more efficiently and get more out of it.
Something comes to heart while you were talking. You just triggered me for, and it's so fascinating how, in the world, people talk often about, so, just pivoting and taking what you're talking about, and then also now applying that discomfort, bringing that together. A lot of people, they chitter chatter about, I got through it in spite of this, and they always do in spite of. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, if that hadn't happened, you wouldn't have got nothing from it.
Right.
Nothing, not just through it, but you wouldn't have got anything. So it's interesting how I find it so fascinating how at the heart of the message of when we talk about, oh yeah, I once was experiencing that, now my life looks like this, we still tend to, with our languaging, appoint that thing as bad, in spite of, meaning we never want to do that again. And what's fascinating is this. How about instead of saying in spite of, it's because of.
Yeah.
I love you because of this. Not in spite of, because in spite of, often I think what it does is it just proves like I have the ability, like, look at me, I have the, and you too maybe, to get through hard stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I guess we could. To me, that's kind of shallow. To me, it's like, wait a minute. To me, that doesn't engage in what I want more so of, and that is to harmonize with reality and be able to trust that what I've been given was exactly the gift that I needed. Because of these things, I became this human. To me, that sounds like a way richer story instead of in spite of. So when I hear your story, Jonathan, one thing that I'm not picking up you being like, wow, I'm sure glad I got through that. No, you still talk about it. It isn't like you're talking about taking your clients on a canoe trip in the sewage so that you never have to do that yourself. You're saying, as far as I'm concerned, I take every morning my canoe. I don't know what you do, but it's like you put it into something, and guess what? The sewage will help to keep you buoyant. It's going to help you float. Yeah. You're going wherever my canoe is, there I am, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I think about my marriage, and we think about, divorce rate, for example, is higher than 50% as far as I know. And I don't know if that's calculating for second and third and fourth marriages and people who just are continuous relational train wrecks. But I've been with my wife for 17 years.
Good job.
And when we set our vows, we deliberately wrote into them till death do us part. And I think nowadays it's maybe people won't do that. They're afraid to say that because they're hedging their bets. They're saying, well, if this doesn't work, or if this gets a little too uncomfortable, I'm probably going to be, I'm out. And I go, I have something that all the money in the world cannot buy. And the only way I got here was 17 years with this woman by my side through hell and back. So all of the hardest experiences in life that I went through with her by my side. And that's the one thing I didn't lose. And I actually tried. I offered her a way out. I said, well, I'm sitting here mired in this blackness, not seeing a way out. I wouldn't blame you if you left, but she wouldn't, And so I wanted a marriage. I think maybe we all do, and maybe it's not a bad thing. You kind of go in with like rose tinted glasses, and this is going to be amazing. It's going to be like a Hollywood rom-com or a Disney story where it's happily ever after. And I'm glad not happily ever after. So we made an agreement when we got married. We said, we're not going to go to bed angry at each other. We will stay up until we figure this out. And we've had some all-nighters hashing things out. But ultimately, there always came a point in conflict where we said, we have a decision to make. Either we resolve this or we split up. Where are we going from here? What do we want more? We want to be with each other. Okay. Then what are we willing to compromise and trade in order to keep moving forward, to keep this moving forward? So we have what we have today because we didn't run away from the hard stuff.
There you go. It became a foundational block that's unshakable. People talk about unshakability all the time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you want unshakable? This is how to do the unshakable. That when you make a decision, that it's not an ongoing, constant negotiation with what maybe you could have decided once. I, like you, made that promise, death do us part. I, like you, made the promise of we're not going to go to bed and fall asleep, basically, until we get this thing figured out. Unlike you, I remember the first or the second time it was getting really late. And she was just getting her vocals warmed up, apparently.
Yeah.
And I was going, honey, I'm tired. Like, I cannot, how women, their brains attach, they can compute, they can just fire, and it's just all good. Right. And I remember just laying in bed and saying, I'm going to botch this but I remember just being like, hey, listen, are you almost done? Because I said, I can't comprehend what you're doing. Like, I get it, but there's something going on here. Like, I'm losing the ability to cognate. And what's interesting is I meant to follow through. I mean, we've been together. This is now going to be year 20. We've been together for 26 years, but married for 22.
Yeah.
And so like for you, my intention was there, baseline is I never got on the bus. I never took the car away. I never left.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, the next morning we hugged it out, or by the evening or something, because I knew evening was coming and I couldn't do two in a row. I couldn't do.
Yeah.
I go to bed at 9-10 o'clock and it was like 2:33. And I think to myself, I don't think she has any idea that she wants to be quitting this anytime soon. She just wants to keep talking about it. I'm like, I can't. And so anyway, to make a long story short, right? It's the difficulties. Often it's like even exhaustion. So even thinking about, some people say, well, I don't like the idea of being exhausted, overwhelmed. I don't like this. And a little like you, to get curious and go like, well, I'm here now. I'm going to put the canoe in this river. I'm exhausted or I'm overwhelmed. And instead of being, I'm overwhelmed, for this or towards that, what am I actually overwhelmed for? Well, I'm overwhelmed for staying resistant to this conversation. Why don't you know what I mean, eh? So you literally, I love what you're doing. I see so much value and so much worth. And isn't it interesting again? If you hadn't come within inches of your life.
Yeah.
If you had, these are the unshakable. So you're like this wise young man that's showing
right
up
over here.
You're the spring chicken. How? Because you get through rough stuff.
Yeah.
You get through it and then you get from it. Talk to me. What is it that you are so thankful that you have received because you chose to not only get through, but you made a decision. There's something waiting for you. Like you said, there's 10 million bucks on the other side. Like it's just the example of, but what are you so thankful? What is it that you have actually gotten from that you're from all this discomfort? I don't know if you just lean in now, if you think about who you are.
Well, that's exactly it. Who I am. And I used to be uncomfortable even talking about who I am and the gifts that I have. And I think I was uncomfortable because maybe I was taught to be uncomfortable. So I've been gifted a really, really good brain, and I can't take the credit. I got it free of charge 40 years ago. So no, but I have an engineer's brain and an empath's brain. So I have the calculation plus the emotional intelligence. And that's why I do what I do. But for most of my life, I ran from this. I didn't do this. I was scared to do this instead of lean into the very thing that I'm best suited to do. So for nearly 40 years, I ran away and didn't do the very thing that I should be doing. And once I also understood that every one of us has gifts, me having gifts does not mean you don't. It does not make me better than you. It just means that I am using what has been given to me. So out of this, I'm so grateful that I am doing what I do now. I would not be doing it. I would not be utilizing my gifts, living my life with a sense of meaning and purpose that I couldn't otherwise have, except that I went through those experiences.
You said something the other day when I spoke with you. You said good times don't make good men.
Yeah.
Profound. Talk to me about what have you observed? How do you wrestle with when you're with someone on a call and they give you opposition? They give you opposition. I don't know. Perhaps you realize they haven't gone through enough not so good times.
Yeah.
Well, what's your angle on this?
Well, I start from the perspective that all behavior makes sense. And so I am
That's
not
smart.
I'm not uncomfortable when I get pushback from a client. I actually get excited. I love finding these points of resistance because I go, oh, there's a lesson in here. There's some gold in here. There's something to uncover. And when we figure out what this resistance is, this is going to be amazing. And so I welcome resistance. I have a podcast where I'm like, I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. I want to go into conversations where my views and perspectives are going to be challenged. So I deliberately put myself in that situation where I'm going to be uncomfortable because I know that maybe what I'm going to say might be shot down. So I get comfortable with this sort of being uncomfortable. So when someone gives me resistance, I relax into it. I'm like, because if you try to meet resistance with force, all you get is two hard heads butting. And so instead I just sort of relax and absorb. I'm like, hey, this is great. I don't get emotionally defensive, but I think it's because I'm not scared to, like, I guess, lose a client. So you think, why would we resist their resistance? Is because maybe we start from this place of scarcity. I'm afraid that if this person is resisting me, they no longer trust me. They're going to dump me. I'm going to lose them. They're going to tell everybody else. I'm going to lose all my clients, and whatever story we might tell ourselves. Once we get past that, I know that I'm a world-class coach. So when someone gives me resistance, I go, this is great. This is the work we want to do. I don't want to hear from my clients that everything's going perfectly. I did everything perfectly this week. I don't want them to tell me what they think I want to hear. And so it starts very early on where we just express, you're going to share with me how it is. And I actually go to my clients every month and I go, you give me feedback. You tell me, how am I serving you? Are you happy with it? Are you not? What's working? What's not? How could my program be improved? How could my coaching be improved? And I got to the point where I think now I probably get 99%, positive feedback. But I got to this place.
You saved your career.
Right. I got to this place because I went to my clients. I wasn't afraid to say, I did. See, I don't start from this place of me putting myself on a pedestal and saying, I'm the guru, you're the dummy. That's what insecure coaches do. They don't realize their place. I realize I am not the star of their show.
No,
they are the star of their show. I am going to come alongside them and help them co-write a couple of chapters. But at some point in time, they're going to continue to live their life without me in it. And so when I like realize my place, in a sense, it's such a freeing and liberating place to be as a coach. I mean, you can hear the path. Like, I love this. This is what I live for.
Yeah, it's there's humans, there's animals, there's plants. What separates the human from the animal is the animal lives in survival response. And so the animal is always looking, where could it go for more safety?
Yeah.
And where is there more danger? So they say the animal, when it looks, it's always looking to critically assess those two things. It's always looking for safety. It's all that it does all day long. And
Mm.
what's interesting when I think about the human, if us humans are not content, firstly,
Yeah.
with being like, we are also survival creatures. So firstly, we are like the animal, where we're survival. If we're not content with that, then we just want to get beyond, constantly be like, oh, no, 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 we're not survival. We are over here. We're thriving. And what I hear when I hear that is I hear a lot of anxious striving away from doing what your body naturally wants to do. And that is, listen, is it really safe? Is a tiger maybe there? So you have to first address that. And so for me, I'm often like, let's just go back to the survival response. Let's first be about, okay, let's critically assess threat response, like you're saying, resistance when it comes out, right? Like, let's actually look for what this ends up being. Because I think once we address properly survival, now what's really cool, the human being has exactly what the animal does, that survival. I look critically for where it's safe and not safe. The only thing is the human has something very unique that the animal doesn't have. And then if I can, so if you study, any type of psychology, one of the things, so it sounds like you've been doing some of this stuff, and, listeners, if you read about these things, they say if the human, for example, I'm just looking out the window right now, but I'm looking for nothing.
Yeah.
And a human can actually do that. The animal can't. When I'm just looking at the window, I can just be gazing, not looking for anything or to anything. I'm just looking at the window. And so the human gets to bring meaning and gets to deliver choice in so much as in like what it wants to do.
Yeah.
So to your point earlier about marriage, right? You could be constantly threatened that she's coming to own your space, which would just mean like you're just going into the animal reductionist. All you can see is just survival.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you go, actually, what is it that I'm actually observing here? Yes, I feel that, but to go beyond just your threat response. Because I think what's so interesting is when you go beyond your threat response, that's when you realize that I am made for much greater than a reactionary response or even a response, but then you start taking initiation. As initiation, I have a little thing. Tell me what you think on this one. And what's your definition of initiation? But I got a little thing where it says initiation is like the highest state of action. This is what they talk about. And the way I describe it is initiation literally listens to what the other person's saying and understands. So there's your empathy piece. Okay. And then it already knows, feels, and understands what I'm about to say. But then it takes both of these and puts it into a container. And then it allows for the co-creation with the source of all love to bring something to the surface. So it isn't just you say you want to go to this restaurant and then I just respond back. It's like the conversation goes forward. It matures because I myself also value what I want to do, but I'm hearing what you're saying, yet I don't need to say what I need to say. But you know what I mean, to bring it together. So that's for me. Initiation is to put what I already know and feel into a container. So I don't need to say it. I have heard what they've said, and then I bring together, and then I initiate the next part forward. And it's interesting because I have this thing where I say, unless something is alive, and this is pretty obvious, unless it's moving, it's dead.
Right.
And so conversation flow of, but how would you, when you think about initiation, how would you bring that forward in your own life? Because what I'm hearing you do a lot of here in this talk, and when I even reflect into your life, I don't know that much about it other than, I've gotten to know you now for the last little while, but it seems like you participate with healthy, you don't wait to take action. You do. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think I start from this perspective, but the opportunities are abundant. That's the one thing. And so if we're looking for opportunities, because the other way of looking at it is like, life sucks and life's out to get me. And I go, no, life is about like presenting me with opportunities. And sometimes, but I have to go and put myself in a position to to be able to receive that. Because I think I would say, luck, we say luck is the meeting of preparation and opportunity.
Mm.
So, and we could even say that maybe, so I put myself in that place for these things. And so I think when we start from this place, there's a whole bunch of opportunities waiting for me. It's not that I can take advantage of all these opportunities. I have to turn down lots of them, but start from this place. The opportunities are abundant. And it's really cool, because what that means is I actually have the freedom to some degree to actually choose the path
Mm.
that I'm going to take. So even a simple
Mm.
conversation is one that's filled with opportunity. So if we listen to this, instead of listening from this, as you've been describing, sort of this defensive place, like I have to defend my position, I go, no, we're going to go into every conversation has the potential to be a journey together. And if all I'm trying to do is like sort of make my voice heard and make my perspective heard, like I'm not going anywhere. There's no opportunity for growth, because I'm firmly planted in my position and go, I'm not leaving until I've said my piece. And it's like, well, no, in staying stuck like that means that you might actually miss out on a better opportunity.
Mm.
So kind of, I just go through life with this idea that there's, if you're looking for it, so our brains have a reticular activating system. That's a bunch of nerves there, but really it's a filter, right? So it's a filter. So if I say, I'm going to buy a yellow car, you start noticing yellow cars because I said yellow car. Your brain starts filtering other things out. I wonder what kind of car he's going to get. Hey, there's yellow. I wonder if he wants to get that one. Well, that's how. So if we say to our brain, I'm looking for opportunities, that's the filter is going to bring those into our conscious awareness. If our brain says I'm looking for threats constantly, well, the brain's only going to feed us threats.
Mm.
So what are we instructing our brain, is important here. So because it takes a little bit of conscious awareness to do this, but instruct your brain to look for opportunities. Get curious. Is there an opportunity in this? So, we take one step back even and just go, let's approach life with curiosity. Is there something here? Maybe there is. Let's be willing to explore. So it's almost like, look at my son. He's 13 months old right now. And I just kind of watch him explore his world with a sense of curiosity and fascination. I think we as adults get so serious that we lose this ability to,
Well, and
to kind of
chances are,
proceed through life.
chances
Yeah.
are when you observe
Yeah.
his life, Tony Robbins, I think, said this and said it best, and that is, we have to learn to empathize with our opportunities and possibilities and not with our problems.
Yeah.
Think about your 13-year-old son. Like, naturally, he's fresh out of, like, he's maybe bathed once. Well, 13 weeks. It's been a while. 13 months.
13 months. Yeah.
13 months. Yeah.
13
So
months,
he's gone to the bathtub a couple times.
Yeah, as a few.
So,
yeah.
right. And
Loves
so,
it.
yeah. But he's constantly trying things, because he goes, perhaps mom and dad say, don't touch that. And he goes, I wonder what happened if I did.
Right.
Yeah. He doesn't think it's a problem to touch the hot kettle. He just thinks, what would happen I wonder if I could feel something? What would happen?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He doesn't have that experience yet. And ironically, I'm like, that's where pain becomes the teacher. You touch that and you go, that didn't feel very good. And, it's funny because I think, like, I obviously want to shelter him from any major traumas. I don't want him to fall off the bed and, smack his head or something like that. But on the same token, like, if he topples over when he tries to run when he's, still learning to walk, well, he's going to figure out, okay, man, maybe I got to slow down a little bit here.
It's like, to the point of, it doesn't feel very good. How is it though then when we realize, I got a little hot tea here, I caught myself a little sinus cold, right? I'm sipping on some tea. How is it though then that we realize, like, we have to be so careful? They talk about that. There's much in life, if not everything in life. You can have it. It's just that some things aren't all good for you. Too much of one thing isn't the great thing, right?
Right.
All right.
Well, I think of, like, it's a sort of a Christian principle of, like, self-denial. And I think that's probably one of the Christian principles that gets viewed as a negative. And I think, well, really, actually, so, okay, the pursuit of endless pleasure is, the end of that road is addiction, and the end of addiction is death. Because pleasure is a dopamine response, and addiction is like an enhanced dopamine response. So if we're in the constant pursuit of pleasure, constantly chasing a dopamine response, the end of that is some form of addiction, and the end of addiction is death. So then self-denial is actually saving our life in one sense. So it says, I will not pursue endless pleasure, because the end of that road is addiction. It's also depression, because if all we ever seek is pleasure, we become desensitized to it. And if we become desensitized to it, then ordinary life becomes depressing. And so one way or another, so the practice of self-denial is not a bad thing, because it saves us from depression and addiction and death.
Well, that's a great way you just described that. And so just to play into that narrative a little bit. So you speak about Christianity, you know, there's a story in the Bible. It talks a bit about, I don't know if I shared this with you before, but so the religious folk will know this, or faith people, and it's not just the Bible, it's other spiritual stories have within it examples of remnants of the story. But for example, King Solomon apparently had everything. He had the castles, and he had everything. He didn't say no to anything. He just had it all. And he talks about how great his life was. And so often people talk about, see, I want a life. He's a wise person, a wise king, had all this and owned a bunch of things and armies and women, whatever he had, right? And that was in another time, right? But that was the way to live, apparently. And it seems like it's lost on society. It seems like we annex out, we stroke out the things we don't want to hear. And basically, before his story is over, he basically has a question, and he says, listen, I lived a good life. The only thing is, I'm wondering if I missed out of much of life. He's like, actually, I said yes to everything. What would have happened if I would have said no to something? So that's for me the initiating discomfort. This whole, if we don't, this is what breeds. They say the human consciousness lives best in the tension somewhere between boredom and depression. So on one side is boredom, and the other side is depression. There's this little story where it's a story about Pip. And so Pip is this person on this earth that, have you heard this story, Pip?
I haven't.
Okay. So Pip's this guy on the earth, and he's not such a great guy. He's involved in like drug crime things. He wears the stripes and wears a certain kind of stripe. And then he's known for, and he's killed a bunch of people, right? And so one day he gets a little bit too busy with killing, and the bullets come a little too close, and this time it's his turn. But he's not quite sure, am I dead, am I alive? And he's checking in with himself. And he goes, yeah, I think I am, because there's somebody standing like with a white gown beside me here. And he goes, well, I think I may have gone to the other side. I think I didn't make it this time. Anyway, so he stands there, and then he just realizes the first thing that he's about to do is, and this would be the wise thing for him, he thinks, is to apologize for his past life. The only thing is, he's caught into this awareness that apparently he's being led someplace with this white little angel, figure, and he's being led to a place that looks really nice. And he thinks, oh my goodness, I think there's a mistake here, and I think I need to make the angel aware that where I think we're going, I don't deserve to be there. But he thinks, wait a minute, maybe I can just not say anything, and maybe I can sneak in. So he says nothing, and sure enough, the angel takes him down the streets, and it's like, you know what it is, streets of gold and whatever else. And there's like, and he loved it. And Pip loves to gamble. He loves to gamble. He likes to win at everything. So as he's walking, it's like all these VLTs and people are winning. It's happy everywhere. Like anything happy that he likes, it's everywhere. So he says, oh my goodness. He just looks around, and he's feeling kind of guilty, going, yeah, I really shouldn't be here. Like I should be somewhere else. But the angel basically says, hey, listen, I just wanted to take you on a little tour. This is all for you. You get to do this all you want. You get to enjoy yourself all you like. This is all for you. And just before the angel leaves, the angel gives him a little card. And on the card says, listen, if you ever run into trouble, if you ever want to get out of here or whatever, if you ever have issue, just contact me. Just contact me. And Pip thinks, I don't know what he's talking about. Like, dude, I'm not telling him anything about my life, my friend. This worked. This worked for me. I got in. Angel leaves, he goes, and he loves it. He gambles. Oh my goodness. Day one, it's just the best thing ever. Day two, day three. The guy can't lose for the life of him. He wins at everything. Blackjack, poker. He wins at everything. Everything is yes and amen. And it's like, boom, win, 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 win. One day, some of his friends, they reach out to him. He says, hey, Pip, you seem not to have been around for a while. You okay? Pip was, yeah, I'm just kind of hanging out. I'm kind of like, bored. They're like, hey, why don't you come down? We're going to play some more. You're going to win some more. And Pip's like, yeah, I could do that. Finally, they say, yeah, man, this isn't healthy for you. You're getting kind of depressed over here. So there's boredom and depression, right? And so we like to live in the tension between. Anyway, he goes down, does this thing again. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the game, he just has it. He knows what's coming. You know what's coming? No surprise. He knows what's coming. He's going to win again. He can't even lose. He gets up, and he's gone. He goes out the door, takes his cell phone, takes that card, finds it, almost can't find it, pulls it out, calls this person and says, listen. And he's like going off. He goes, I think there's been a mistake. And the angel's like, a mistake? What are you talking about? And he goes, hey, listen, I didn't tell you about my past life. And he goes on and just rants about all this stuff because he's trying to get out, right? And then the angel goes, wait a minute, whoa, whoa, where do you think you are? And Pip goes, I think I'm in heaven. The angel goes, no, you're in hell, my friend. Sometimes we think hell will be where we'll all be taken away. But we live we live in the tension. We like to be someplace in between a depressed state and a bored state. And let's be honest, we don't want any of those states, but that's psychoanalytic terms. We live in the tension between. And if you want to see what it looks like to win all the time, I kind of laugh sometimes. It's funny, right? You said earlier, life is out to get me. Well, let's play with that a little bit. We all want to be sought out. Apparently, we all want to be seen by something. If life itself sees us, hallelujah, life saw us.
Yeah.
Life is more than a human. Life is, and so it's like life is seeking me out. Oh my goodness. I don't know about you, but I get to choose. And for me, I'm like, yeah, life came out to get me. It changed me. It shaped me.
Yeah.
Without that, there is no purpose for you in my life.
Yeah.
Then apparently I am God and you are just some little person who, you know what I mean? That doesn't happen. Yeah. So what's your angle, when you think about life shaping? Life is out to get me. Maybe life is seeking us out so tenderly and so compassionately. It's hoping that we get something from it. What do you hope that life is here to teach us that maybe you want to have a recommitment towards? Well, what is it that you want to get from life more of?
Well, I think at this point, I'm like, I want more of the same in a sense, but I want to continue to be challenged.
Yeah.
So it's not that I want more exactly the same, but I want to continue on the path that I'm on. And I want to continue to be challenged and to grow. And I think that's ultimately what we're looking for is really. So instead of, I find myself saying many times over, like, I don't want to try and hide out from the hard experiences. So ironically, when I say more of the same, I'm like, I want some more hard experiences. I don't want to choose them. I don't want to go hunting for them, but I don't want them not to come because I know what I get out of them. I know that the hard experiences are what caused me to grow and caused me to develop.
How do you know you're ready for hard experiences? I'm not talking about ready as in like I'm 100% certain,
right?
This, not like that. But how do you know in your state for masculinity, so healthy, positive masculinity, how do you know you're ready for what is to come? And we're talking about Viktor Frankl style here. I'm just going to challenge you. I mean, that's a pretty tough one, but no, I'm being honest. Because for me, if it can't go through a lens like that, it's not real.
And I don't know if we're ever perfectly ready either.
True.
But what I know is that because of what I've been through, what it has shown me is that I have the tools. I have the tools to deal with what is thrown my way, what is put my way. And I think, so it's not that I can anticipate exactly what's coming. I can't. I don't know. I don't know what hard experiences lie ahead. But what I do know is because of what I've been through, because of what those experiences have equipped me with, that's how I know I'm ready, that I have these tools. And that when the time comes that I need them, I'll pull them out and I'll use them.
The joyful experience to feel oneself unfold in public, not knowing how one was going to unfold in public when the threshold hits. That's like you say, we can't be fully ready.
Yeah.
But maybe as you do life enough, you begin to realize there's someone in there that seems to show up a certain way when he thinks he's come to the end of himself. And I wonder if we can be ready for threshold, meaning a new threshold that we've never experienced. And I'm wondering if there could be some things that we as humans would say, let it be known. And I don't mean to overtly, and somehow we got into the spiritual talk. And really, life is spiritual. So I am like you, I am like this, right? But it's like, be still and know. Be still and know what? When life challenges me, when I got a noose around my neck, and it didn't work out the way that I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
What? Be still and know what? To take a silent, sacred moment and be like, what is this? I get to choose how I show up. I get to choose if I stay in the marriage or leave. I get to choose. I want what I have. I want exactly the discomfort that I have, because, my enemies, it's like my wife will often say, if you ever want the best experience, when your enemies show up, you bow to them and you be like, okay, you're my teacher. What is it I can learn from you? Listen, just a reflection back to you.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think about threshold, when you think about experiencing, when you think it's too much, and then you show up and you be like, who is in there? It's like, wow, to uncover that I need to do nothing, to be still. And in that moment, knowing that that's all that needs. Wow, to live from that place of existence, right? Not have to pedal and strive. And, don't get me wrong, all this stuff I think we're talking about here is great. Mindset, all this is beautiful. I love it. I love it so much. But there will come a point in time, likely. And if we dial it up to the Viktor Frankl, we're going pretty intense. And for those of you who don't know, Viktor Frankl, Auschwitz, he found a way to find meaning in the depth of that misery.
I think the meaning comes from knowing that one way or another, this life is finite. This period of our existence, whatever you might believe, I believe that we have an eternal soul housed in our body, but this part of our existence is finite, and maybe that's what actually gives us liberty. And I think about a story of a soldier, and it was an American soldier during the Korean War in the 50s, and he ended up saving a number of his comrades when he took out 16 enemy combatants. And really, and this wasn't some kind of, I don't know, Rambo movie sort of whatever, but when he just accepted, like, I'm going to die, and so I'm going to die, so I might as well do what I need to do. And he actually survived. But once he'd made peace with the fact that he was going to die, now he was free to do what he needed to do.
Oh my goodness. That's always the thing, right? You fear death a million times, and you know what? You might just die before you even get to the second time of thinking about what might happen. If you can just accept it, it's like, you know what is on the other side? We tend to think, and this is right back, come full circle. We tend to think all we want is sunshine and rainbows. All we want is say yes to all the things, all the luxuries of the world. When it's like, actually, we don't feel like human beings if that's what happens, because there's no challenge, there's no stress test. We get so bored. We think we're in heaven, but we're in hell. Right? We're actually living a hellish existence by constantly wanting to flee our current existence.
Right.
Get away from, right? So last question I have for you is, some people talk about being right. And apparently the goal is to be right. Apparently your goal is not to be right. Talk to us a bit about that. Take a minute or two.
Yeah. Well, the moment that I think that I am right and I have it all figured out, I've closed off the door to learning. And the desire to be right comes from a place of insecurity and defensiveness rather than openness. And so if I'm wanting to be right, it's that I don't believe even maybe in my ability to grow and to learn and to develop. So instead, I shelter myself away and I try to defend my position. Instead, I say, well, no, I'm okay with being wrong. In fact, I'm quite happy when someone highlights to me that you're wrong about this. I'm like, awesome. Show me how, because I believe that I can grow from this. And if anything, you know what, maybe it turns out that I was correct, or that I was holding the correct position. But now that I've gone through that experience, the openness to being wrong, one way or another, I'll either learn that I was right or learn that I was wrong. But one way or another, I will have grown from that, because I don't start from this place of insecurity where I feel I must be right as I presently am.
That's an interesting take, right? The right and wrong thing. I think you and I, it's like, for the observer, if you folks taking this in, I think you can see that if Jonathan and I were focused on who is right and who could be wrong, we wouldn't be having a really nice time right now. We're having a really nice time because, and just the way I'm looking at it, my example is not fighting for the correct thing, but fighting to do the connected thing. And that is to evolve the narration forward. And it's like, how is it that I already know what I know, and he knows what he knows? And the reality is, how can we not feel threatened by the stories of, the opposite is true, to collaborate and be like, well, my perspective, this is what happens. This is what happens, I think, when you focus on, we apparently all think that we can get further along if we focus on right. The only thing is, where is right? Well, right seems to be found in the perspectives of humans and what they've gone through. you know, and
Yeah.
so we have
Yeah.
we have to listen to their story, because their story, like suffering that doesn't have purpose, doesn't make a person feel very helpful.
Mm.
Everything, back to your whole faith tradition, but they say a good God, he's always redeeming everything back to itself or himself or itself or herself. It doesn't matter to me, but God is always redeeming things back to him.
Mm.
So, all our suffering have to have a purpose. And so if we don't allow others to bear their suffering, we have to allow their story to have a purpose. And so their
Mm.
purpose, it comes forward. And for us to onboard this, I think to be completely honest, we have such a rich, like, we're talking about an amazing platform, the way that this whole thing was set up. Like, people have so many dynamic experiences. We're like, wow, the texture of this play called life is a little beyond almost comprehension. It's like,
It is.
we are set up, my friend, to be grateful and to just be like, oh my goodness, and awe and wonder. And what is this? And how apparently all of this, if we let ourselves into it, it doesn't make us funnel down into some crap hole. If anything, we're going, you know what? This is a ride. This is a roller coaster, amazing ride that I get to be on. And the only thing that it seems to me is that's and very important. The essential requirement is I don't label things as good and bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think as verse Romans 8 and maybe 28, all things work together for good for them that love God. And so if if I have a faith in God, that God desires something good for my life and would like to work good things into my life, then I accept each experience as it comes. And instead of saying, why are you doing this to me? It's like, what are you working into me? How are you
So good.
changing me? Right. So
So good. So good. So good. Life is getting into me. Yeah, thank the Lord for whatever that is. But thank you for that mystery. It's funny because we often be like, well, I'm not going to let life get a hold of me. And we know what it means. And people say, yeah, no, we understand. But it's like, hey, listen, I don't know about you, but I have this little thing where when I meet someone in a coffee shop or anywhere, I'm always drawn to people that have a limp. And I'm not talking about like just a physical limp, but when I can tell they have an emotional limp. Listen, in my opinion, you haven't lived much if you don't reveal your limp, because we all have a limp, and we all have a limp.
yeah.
And actually, the sooner we can let that be part of our accolade, the sooner people can go like, oh, okay, you're fully human. We get it. Okay.
Right.
And you have let life serve you. You haven't been like, no, I'm resisting that part of life. I'm resisting that part of life. Okay, that's going to be really hard. But to me, it seems like the wisdom, it's like when the limp appears, we're like, yeah, this has been a really nice thing that this has happened. And what's really nice is you have come alongside that and you've been like, I'm going to integrate it, right? Unless you integrate, you're not really getting too far, right? You're always pushing out. So
yeah.
well, Jonathan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Perhaps we'll have to do this again sometime. I appreciate your soul. Yeah, we just might. Yeah. So Jonathan, where can people find you?
freedomnutritioncoach.com if you're interested in learning more about what I do in the realm of weight loss, health, and that kind of transformation. I also do teach online coaches how to build online businesses. So if you want to learn a bit more about that, it's just johnmclernon.com. And I have two podcasts. One is called Between the Before and After, where we share stories of people overcoming significant obstacles in their life. The other one's called It's Not So Black and White. And that's where we have some difficult and nuanced discussions and civil disagreements and whatnot. So I think both are really interesting podcasts. Not that I'm biased or anything. They're interesting to me, which is why I do them.
Yeah. If you don't mind, for the audience, do you want to just spell your name? So you gave the website. You want to just spell that out so that we don't mess up?
Yeah, JONMCLERNON. JohnMcLernon.com.
There you go, folks. Jonathan, it's been an absolute. By the way, do you prefer Jonathan or John?
I go over
Sorry.
both.
Both. Okay, there you go. John and Jonathan, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I always appreciate someone who is willing to unfold and just experience something new. And so you brought some new tickles to my life, and so I get to open
That's
things
good.
up in a new way. So thank you for that.
That's amazing. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Okay. We'll see you soon.
I sincerely hope you enjoyed that little interplay. If you liked the podcast episode, let us know by subscribing, leaving a little review, and sharing with a friend as you feel appropriate. Honestly, the guests that I host on the show, they love the feedback, and I honestly love knowing that you're listening. So whether you choose me as your guide or not, that's simply great. And why, you ask? Well, because you're the one, and you're one of those that's listened to the very end of this podcast. You've clearly made the decision to invest in yourself, and ask yourself, how isn't that just the best news? Good job. If you decide you need or want to, one, get unstuck by activating your creativity and inner resources. Two, see things clearly. Three, get to the next level. Four, live with vibrant energy and passion, or maybe all four. Simply go to www.jameshepner.com for one-on-one coaching, and or go to www.weeklywinsandlosses.com for the no-charge Friday noon global community weekly wins and losses video call. So again, I thank you for investing in yourself. See you next time. My sincere hope is that you've gleaned a few nuggets for yourself and a few pieces of interest that help you move forward in your unique journey. So again, I thank you for joining me here. This is James Hepner clocking out. Until next time, peace out, rock up.